The thought of facing horrors such as the King's Gambit or the Danish after e5 makes many black players want to take refuge behind a wall of pawns, and for this reason they often play things like the French defence or the Caro Kann with c6 followed on the next move by d5. Most of your opponents will only have a basic knowledge of Caro Kann theory and will be pre-programmed to play certain moves no matter what white does. You can turn this to your advantage by adopting a tricky move order, with knight out to c3, and then after d5 you bring your knight out to f3. The first point of this idea is that if black plays d takes e4, knight takes e4, and now the typical Caro Kann move bishop f5, white can play his knight to g3. If black still doesn't notice any difference, he may play his bishop back to g6, whereupon you play h4 and he plays h6. All these moves are well known to theory had white got his pawn on d4 rather than having his knight on f3. But now there's a very great difference. In this position, white can achieve a big advantage by playing knight into e5. After bishop h7, he can play queen out to h5, threatening mate on f7. After black fends white off with g6, white can bring his bishop out to c4. If black now takes the queen with g takes h5, then bishop takes f7 is mate. Black therefore has to play e6, after which white's queen would finally be forced to retreat, say to f3 or e2. The resulting position would be terrible for black. Not only is his kingside pawn structure severely weakened, but this bishop on h7 really has got no prospects whatsoever. White's position is close to winning. After de, knight takes e4. Instead of bishop f5, another popular setup for black is to play knight to d7, intending knight gf6. Against this, you can try a really cunning move, playing the queen to e2. Now, if black continues mechanically with knight g to f6, then all of a sudden there occurs knight d6 mate, because the pawn on e7 is pinned against the king. If black realises in time what you're up to, then he'll probably play his knight on d7 to f6. But then you can use this move queen e2 as one step towards queenside castling by now playing b3. After knight takes e4, queen takes e4, knight f6, I recommend that you play your queen to f4 and follow up with the moves bishop b2, queenside castling, bishop d3 and rook de1. In this position we see that white has taken advantage of the fact that his pawn is not on d4 to give his bishops very strong diagonals from b2 up to g7 and d3 up to h7. Later on white might be able to play knight e5 and then trundle his g-pawn up the board. After d takes e4, knight takes e4, a line that you might come across quite a lot is knight out to f6, and after knight takes f6 check, black might take with a g-pawn, g takes f6. Black's idea in this line is to be able to get counterplay on the g-file and probably castle on the queen side. White's most effective plan is to immediately block the g-file by going g3 and bishop g2, and in fact this bishop on g2 will form the basis of a future attack by white against black's queenside castled king. In the subsequent play, white will put his king over on the king side, and then probably start throwing his queenside pawns forward to cooperate with this bishop on g2, say with d3, bishop e3, b4 and a4. The eventual b5 push will start to undermine black's queenside pawn structure. At club level, I think that d takes e4 is the move that's most likely to occur in practice. But now let's have a look at some of the other moves. If black plays d4, attacking a knight on c3, then white replies knight to e2, and after c5, he challenges this pawn on d4 with c3. Now if black takes on c3, then white will recapture with his b pawn, and then set up a broad pawn centre with d4. It would be a serious mistake for black to push this pawn on with d3, as after knight f4, the pawn on d3 would have to be supported by c4, whereupon white, with queen a4 check, would pick up not only this pawn on c4, but then the guy on d3 would fall as well. If your opponent happens to be booked up and plays the theoretical move bishop out to g4, I think you should play h3, which is normal. But if he now plays bishop takes f3, then instead of taking with the queen on f3, which is the normal move, I think you should play an old move which was once played by Mikhail Tal in his match for the World Championship in 1960 with Mikhail Botvinnik. Tal, amazingly, played g takes f3. After e6, Tal went d4, and after Botvinnik's knight d7, he made the mistake of bringing his bishop out to the f4 square. It would have been much better had he played his bishop out to e3 and followed up with queen d2, followed by castling queenside. In this position, white has got a strong centre, the two bishops and an open g-file. Instead of bishop takes f3, black's other move is to drop the bishop back to h5. White can then play e takes d5, and after c takes d5, go bishop b5 check. In this position, black's bishop on h5 would really like to be able to go over to d7, but unfortunately it's shut out of play on the king's side. He's therefore forced to play knight c6, after which g4, bishop g6, knight e5 steps up the pressure on this knight on c6. Black should play rook c8, and after d4 he should go e6, but then h4 is likely to upset a lot of the players of the black pieces. White's threat is to play the move h5, trapping this bishop on g6. If black defends against this with f6, then white eliminates this important bishop with knight takes g6. And after hg, he can play bishop back to d3, hitting the pawn on g6. Black would then have an awkward decision to make between going king f7 and blocking his bishop on f8 in with the move knight g e7. Last but not least, let's look at the move knight f6 on black's third move, after which e5, knight e4 has been played. The book move is knight e2, hoping to eject this knight on e4 with d3. What I recommend is a move used by that great master of the attack, Rudolf Spielmann, in a game against a guy called Walter in Trenchin-Teplitz, 1927. Spielmann played queen e2. Attacking this knight in e4, black took on c3, and Spielmann accelerated his development by going d takes c3, opening up this bishop on c1. Black played b6, and now Spielmann brought his knight into d4, Black attacked the knight with c5, and now Spielmann played a beautiful trick with e6. The point of this is that if Black now takes this knight on d4 with cd, then White can play Queen b5 check, and after knight d7 he goes e takes f7 check, king takes f7 is forced, and now queen takes d5 check forks the king on f7 and the rook on a8.